Hey, hello everybody. So now that we are finished with Macbeth, we are going to move on to The Catcher in the Rye. And before we begin that, I'd like to do a brief overview of the writing style of Catcher in the Rye, which is called stream of consciousness. And what that means is stream, meaning that it's this constant flow of information, and the of consciousness part means that it's coming from like the person's conscience. It's just exactly what's on the top of their thoughts. All the thoughts of their head are being kind of poured into the paper, and it is getting essentially what it is trying to recreate how our thoughts actually work in our head on paper. Which is usually pretty messy. It's kind of jumbled. It's kind of one memory leading to another, which then leads to another, which then leads to another. It's just constant flow of thoughts and information, which can be a little confusing when you first start reading it. And then as we progress through the book, it gets easier and easier to understand. So speaking of memory, we're going to play a little memory association activity today. You're going to do a little bit of a writing experiment. And that is how we're going to bridge ourselves into reading Catcher in the Rye eventually. So we're not going to pick up the book today. We're going to talk about writing style. We're going to do some writing of our own, and then we'll get into reading. Actually, we'll get into some background information first, because there's a lot to understand about the time period of Catcher in the Rye, but we'll worry about that later. Okay, so sometimes two ideas have nothing to do with each other, but they're connected by means of memory. So everyone has their own set of totally unique memories, and we associate words with each other that other people might make no sense out of. Things that might make sense to us that everybody else thinks is insane, or you might associate, I don't know, like rock climbing with birthday cake, and that could be an association that makes perfect sense to you. But if you talk to a professional rock climber, they might be very confused by that. This is called memory association, and it's how Holden, the main character of Catcher in the Rye, communicates most of the novel. A lot of the text of this novel is a consistent chain of memory association, which sounds more confusing than it actually is. So let me give you a personal example. Rowboats make me think of my grandparents, because my grandparents would always take their rowboat with them when they went camping. That's not a clearly or outwardly connected idea when you don't understand the memory, but it makes sense in my mind. Another example is that sewing reminds me of my sister, since she's been sewing since high school. Most people don't think of their sisters when they think of sewing, but that's my memory association, right? The word rowboat is not connected to grandparent by virtue of the fact that it's a rowboat. That's connected to grandparent because of my memory association with them. And it's important to understand that, because when Holden goes into some of his memory associations, the meaning of why he starts thinking of this thing isn't clear until he gets to the end of that particular thought. Now, to expand with my memory association, so to just continue this chain, right, if we're going to connect memory to memory to memory, word to word to word, rowboats make me think of my grandparents, which makes me think of German food, which makes me think of cinnamon we'd put on the food, which makes me think of eggnog, which makes me think of a Christmas tree we had, which makes me think of the cat that used to like to lie under it. Now, if you go word to word, rowboat, German food, cinnamon, eggnog, Christmas tree, cat, some of those make a lot of sense together. Like eggnog and Christmas tree are pretty closely linked by what they are, but some of them really don't, right? Rowboat and German food, that's a very personal connection that I don't think many people would make. So the sentences are long, and the trail may not make sense to the reader, but it makes perfect sense to the person whose mind connected the ideas together, right? To me, that's a totally normal stream of thought. To you, it might not make any sense at all, and I have to explain it. So this writing style is known as stream of consciousness, when you're consistently connecting memories together and you're adding in the little narration in between. Now, this would be a very bad... this is not a good paragraph to have in a novel, but when we connect it with narration, it'll sound more like actual writing. So what I want you to do right now is try, well, I guess not right now. What I want you to do when you're done with the video is go back in and try to make an associated memories list. So we'll start with birthday, and I want you to try to get the list to about 10 or so items. But when you start with birthday, so what do you think of when you hear birthday? So just number what you think of when you hear the word. So we'll start, birthday, and then I think of cake, which I think is pretty normal, and then candles, and then you continue and go so on and so forth. So like candles make me think of TJ Maxx, because they always have a lot of candles, etc. I'll let you do the whole list. So go in real quickly, do your list of 10. Just get used to the idea of chaining memories onto memories onto memories. And then what we're going to wind up doing with that is get more into what Catcher is actually written like. I promise you that the novel is not just a consistent stream of random words. There's actually some story going on. So we'll link words together through narration. Now, this is an example. This would have been really fun to do in person, but obviously that is not an option. So we're going to do this the best we can, not in person. But imagine that we have the word crate, right? So we take 30 seconds to a minute to write down a full story using memory association about crate. So let me show you an example, and hopefully this will make a little more sense. So we get the word crate, and then we write just whatever comes to mind off the top of your head. Don't worry about making it pretty. Don't worry about making it, super meaningful. It doesn't have to be the next best thing that anyone's ever written, but it does have to be your personal memories around the word that we give you. My example, when I worked at Rite Aid in high school, we would stack up all the empty totes and milk crates behind the back door. The milk crates always stunk because little dribbles of milk would dry up on the bottom of the plastic and spoil. One time when I was opening a tote, an entire can of Red Bull had broken inside of it, and the whole aisle began to smell like it. That was in the food aisle, where we also used to sell little cans of anchovies and sardines. At Rite Aid, anchovies and sardines in the same store that people go to when they need Band-Aids and burn cream. I wonder how they ever decided they would sell fish there. So that's my word association story, so to speak, right? It only took me about a minute to write. It's not particularly very powerful or interesting, but it is a full story that kind of shows you what I think of when I hear the word crate. There's some weird word connections there. Crate to anchovies is kind of like a little bit of a stretch, but that's what my brain does when I think of it. So that's my word association story. And here's another example, just in case that one didn't make sense. This is based off the word markers. Markers are the worst. For one, they bleed through paper like nobody's business, and the cheap ones tend to really make messy lines. You also can't tell if they're dried up or not. At least with colored pencils, you can see a pencil stub and know that's empty. Coloring with markers is like driving a car without a working gas gauge. One time, I had to drive my friend's car that didn't have a gas gauge. Well, it did, but the needle fell into the little plastic part and couldn't tell you how much gas was in the car anymore. So I'm driving his car without any idea of when it will stop working. I don't know when the last time he put gas in was. I've never run out of gas on the side of the road before, and that was not the time to start. I can't say the same for my marker usage. So again, that takes me from marker to running out of gas on the side of the road, which makes sense for me, might not make sense for you. But now that I've written a complete narrative, you can kind of see the thread that connects it through. So these can be pretty fun. Hopefully this kind of style makes sense to you. I'm definitely going to be available in the chat for any questions if you need to talk to us about anything. What I'm going to ask you to do today, the first thing I'd like you to do, just so that you get a hang of it, is go back in and write the list of words that you connect with birthday. But then the actual assignments for today, the first one is I'd like you to write a short narrative paragraph in this style. And again, a short narrative paragraph is like about the length of these paragraphs, enough to tell a full story. And submit it as a comment on this assignment post. And your word for that paragraph is book. So whatever you associate with book, memories, stories, just in a short stream of consciousness paragraph where you're linking thought to thought to thought, and you're putting some connective tissue in between. And then the second assignment for the day, and this will take us, along with this video, I imagine this will take us to our full 55 minutes, but I'd like you to write your fourth digital journal entry, but do so using this style of writing. I would love you to write about spring break. You can write about either the spring break we just had, or if you want to go back to past spring breaks, we might have done something fun. That is totally fine with me too. Your topic is spring break, so imagine that's like your word, and now write in this stream of consciousness style about spring break for 2 paragraphs to fit the same format as your other entries. And I hope that makes sense. So you're essentially writing 2 things with stream of consciousness style. One is going to be a short narrative paragraph as a comment on this post. The other is going to be your 4th digital journal entry. And with that, that is our assignment for the day. And I'm using a new